would like Dr. Dua to please lead the session. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I didn't hear it. Good afternoon. That's a wake-up call, isn't it? Great, awesome. Respected Dr. G.N. Singh, respected distinguished dignitaries on the dais, off the dais, ladies and gentlemen, and students in particular, and of course, eminent doctors sitting here representing homeopathy. I have a confession to make, a submission to make. I was the chairman of Pharmexcouncil, Pharmaceutical Export Promotion Council, for 2.5 years. And prior to that, I was the vice chairman of Pharmexcouncil. I treaded the journey from Indian exports, pharmacy of the world is coined by us in Pharmexcouncil and validated by every leader of the great nation and Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji. Because we supplied drugs, all drugs, including traditional medicines, to 206, ladies and gentlemen, 206 out of 211 countries. And the 5 countries which were missing in the direct exporters list were Francophone countries which were being supplied through France. So the whole world was catered to for us. And it was absolutely demonstrated beyond any doubt to even the most biggest detractors of India, as we know, right? The latest one is Trudeau, of course, sorry to say that, but that's what it is, right? I don't know where he's going to get his medicines from. So we became the pharmacy of the world. So whilst we took, in about 4.5 years' time, exports from $8 billion currently to $30 billion. Just imagine. We are the largest exporters in volume terms to the world. Having said that, every review meeting that we had with Honorable Minister of Commerce, to whom we used to report, Shri Piyush Goyal ji, he used to ask me, what is the export of other verticals? You have formulations at about 75%. You have bulk drug, right, predominantly out of Andhra and Telangana, Gujarat, etc. That's about 15%. And what's the balance? Vaccines during COVID came up substantially, 10%. So he says, then that means nothing in homeopathy, nothing in Ayurveda. What's happening, right? So that is the story of lack of exports of homeopathy drugs and to some extent Ayurveda drugs. The global market for homeopathy currently is valued at about $10 billion. And the Indian market for homeopathy is currently valued at about $1.5 billion, right? We have a significant component of the global market share, wallet share, whereas we have 40% in allopathy, we have hardly about 20% in terms of homeopathy. And that too, ladies and gentlemen, you'll be shocked to know, is predominantly 90% of that is basically in domestic market. Now exports. I got on the bandwagon of Bhargava Phytolab Private Limited, the owner and promoter of a 103-year-old company about 2 years ago, to help his young son, dynamic son, Karan Bhargav, to ensure that the exports from the current level at 95%, that means whatever India exports out of it, homeopathic products out of India, 95% is done by Bhargava Phytolab. Right? Incredible journey indeed. How to take it forwards from the current 45 countries to about, let's say, another target of about 75 countries. Now, in this perspective, the confession part, the submission part, when I got on board of Bhargava Phytolab, my conception or perception of homeopathy was, white globules and a liquid. When an educated person from Ahmedabad doesn't know nothing about homeopathy, it's a pity. Now, how would you expect others to know about it, right? The general common man in the street would not know about it, right? Now, that's the level of perception, knowledge, etc. by Indians about homeopathy. So, idea in telling you or making this confession is, there's such a huge potential lying out there. If we are the pharmacy of the world, right, on the allopathic standpoint or perspective, and now biologics and vaccines, right, in homeopathy, I'm convinced beyond doubt, beyond any sense of argument, that we could be the next pharmacy of the world even for homeopathy. Definitely yes. I was excited and delighted to see the session 1 presentations. And Dr. Manchanda, I must say that what you've captured is the essence of regulatory pathway for exports. Why I'm talking more about exports and less about domestic? Because one, it's very attractive for the industry. We have lots of people from the industry here. The value realization is much greater. The compliances are much better, right? And in terms of perception of India as the pharmacy of the world, it adds a new dimension to the existing perception that we have currently in the world. So that being said, currently the issues and problems that we face are, and you'll be very surprised, that there is no WHO CGMP inspection done for homeopathy companies. Mr. Bhargav, myself, we've taken it up very strongly with Ayush Ministry because, the ball was going from one court to another. The CDS CEO is invested with WHO CGMP inspection, but that inspection is not happening because WHO never gave a mandate. That they did not agree some time ago that homeopathy is a rational, proper, efficacious, affordable therapy area, right? Now, in comes Dr. Tedros here to Ahmedabad a couple of months ago, and he announced, thanks to the Honorable Prime Minister, that Jamnagar is going to be the center for traditional medicines from now on. Ladies and gentlemen, there couldn't be no more exciting news than this. It's amazing, right? Now you can imagine that in the true sense of the word, the journey to the regulated markets and other rest of the world markets will start. Now, without WHO CGMP, we've been able to export to 45 countries in Bhargava. Now floodgates will open because every country regulators, and I know practically all of them coming from Pharmexcouncil, right, would raise the heckles. We don't know nothing about the regulations. We give them EU regulations, we give them US regulations, as Dr. Manchanda and the rest of them explained about it, clinical trials, right? But they would not understand because they don't know nothing about homeopathy, right? So therefore, it's painstaking to explain to them what homeopathy is all about and what kind of regulatory pathway you can institute. But of course, you needed a stamp of WHO, and hopefully that's now going to happen. Good news for the industry, good news for the doctors, good news for the producers is that CDS, CEO and Ayush Ministry are working very closely together, and we expect that in about 6 months' time, we will have the prerogative of getting the WHO CGM inspection point 1 and COPP, which is not being issued the proper way it is done for the allopathic drugs. It's being issued by the state authorities, but not the way it is being done for the allopathic industry. That also will automatically happen. What does it mean? It means that low-hanging, wonderful business, which is sitting out there waiting for you to be called as the pharmacy of the world in terms of homeopathy, can be expedited to the next 5 or 10 years. I can see the goalpost very clearly in front of me that low-hanging, high value, high profits, ultimately in business profit also is a motive, and profit needs to be reinvested in the industry to modernize the units. In the morning, Dr. Koshyat spoke about number of units being only 30 in Gujarat. I mean, it's very embarrassing to hear that when you have 5,000, 6,000 units of formulations, close to about 1,000 units of bulk drug pharma and vaccines and biologics, etc. 30 units of homeopathy. I'm sure this great step forward by the Government of India, Ministry of Ayush and PMO of creating GCTM in Jamnagar will be a great fillip to the industry in Gujarat and of course the rest of the country. So let me come to AMR. We've heard an illustrious speaker earlier talking about AMR, and I interacted with you, Dr. Abdul, during the break after the inaugural. AMR is very close to my heart. I headed a company which is the largest in cephalosporins in the world, located in Derabasi, close to Chandigarh. GSK was our partner, UK. They would audit the company every year for AMR, antimicrobial resistance, because, as per documentation by WHO, there are 32 antibiotics in allopathy which have developed resistance, right, because of AMR. You're leaching the antibiotics through air, through soil, and through water. All of that is being ingested by us and the animals, right? And that is leading to development of AMR amongst the human beings, and also the veterinarian perspective as well to the animals, right? And also indiscriminate use of antibiotics in our country irrationally across the length and breadth of the country is leading to further AMR. I'm not an expert, but I'm sure experts will agree with me that it's a very serious issue. There are only 6 antibiotics which have demonstrated almost around 70-80% efficacy. The rest of it is less than 50%. So you can imagine in a COVID-like situation, when you're faced with resistance of antibiotics, right? And GSK has written volumes and volumes of case studies on this, and I'm privy to that. Right? What's going to happen? God forbid something happens in terms of an outbreak of a disease, and antibiotics don't work. What's going to happen? That's where homeopathy is going to work. Things like curcumin, things like echerichia and tulsi, right, are known to be immunoboosters. And there are clinical studies which have been done by Bhargava Phytolab, as well as 1 or 2 other institutional organizations, which says and proves beyond doubt that these enhancers can lead to your resistance to the antibiotics going down 0.1 and your susceptibility to the antibiotics coming down. So to me, the lowest hanging fruit today is AMR antibiotics, where homeopathic, and of course Ayurveda, no questions about that, right, can work in conjunction as a preventive measures to make sure that you don't fall a prey to infections. There is another revealing case study in veterinary sciences, and I'm sure veterinary specialists will speak more about it. When a horse, had this huge problem of wound which was not healing at all, they gave gentamicin intravenous, they gave other antibiotics, penicillins downstream, ampicillin, and so on and so forth. Nothing worked. They were treated by a homeopathy veterinary doctor with Silicea terra, and lo and behold, very well documented study. In about a week's time, everything was cured. The horse was back on its feet. Now that's homeopathy, low-hanging fruit, high potential in terms of veterinary also. So with this perspective, and to cut short because of the time constraints, I'd just like to reiterate what some of the eminent speakers said earlier in the morning, that safety, efficacy, clinical trials, right, and immunogenicity are the 3 pillars on which you can clinically establish homeopathy. And that's the need of the art. But my word of caution here is that a clinical trial in allopathy today can put you down by a minimum crore, and on the higher side, if you go to Europe or Switzerland, things of that nature, it can put you down by 3.5 to 4 crores. Who can afford it? In allopathy, we can't afford it. There's a question of homeopathy. So in homeopathy, we have to mull and we have to debate and discuss and come up with subject matter specialists a different way of clinical trials for homeopathy and even for Ayurveda also. Because toxicity is not such a big problem as is the case with allopathy, right? That being said, I think we need to sit with the government of India. We need to sit with subject matter experts like Dr. Manchanda, Dr. Khurana, etc., to ensure that we have an easier pathway. And being a GCTM, right, I think that'll be a great facilitator in terms of making sure that your clinical pathway is not the same as that of allopathy. It's a different pathway altogether. The cost will come down, it'll be more expeditious, and you'll gain more entry into very attractive markets for that matter. So stability data, efficacy, toxicity, immunogenicity in clinical trials are the pathway for you to harvest the potential which is lying out there from an industry perspective. And institutional support, government support, would make sure that we get to that point where we are able to harness everything in homeopathy. I mean, we have 500,000 qualified homeopaths. Nowhere in the world. The rest of the world, ladies and gentlemen, does not have that number. So we have the largest number of qualified homeopaths in the world. And through the length and breadth of the country, homeopathy is established. It's percolated down to the common man. And even on the OTC front, just to come to the last leg of my dispensation, even in OTC, for stress busting, for jet lag, and there's one more, happy legs, when you have cramps in your legs, right? And spondylosis. I'll give you my own example. I work a lot on the computer, so do you, and so do the youngsters, I'm sure. 50-60% of your active time you're on the laptop or you're on the computer, right? And what happens is cervical spondylosis. And that happened to me. Mr. Bhargav is sitting there right in front of me, right? He told me, take my spondin drops. And look at the magic. I took about 5 drops in a 1/4 of water, slightly lukewarm water. And within 5 minutes, ladies and gentlemen, it vanished. It completely vanished. So I am the greatest ambassador and proponent of Spondin. And recently, just about a week back, we are participating in Canada in a global exhibition for natural ingredients. Mr. Bhargav has sent our ambassadors, our 2 wonderful girls, to Canada in the exhibition and sent them with a spray of Spondin. You carry it in your travel box, just spray 3 swishes or 4 swishes, and your pain is gone. Now that is the magic of homeopathy, ladies and gentlemen. 40% of the revenues of Bhargava Phytolab comes out of one product, one molecule called Spondin. With this, I'll just stop here and thank you very much to the organizers. My senior alum, Dangayatji, who made sure that I was here, who made sure that Bhargavji is here. So thank you very much to all the sponsors and organizers for giving us this opportunity. Thank you very much.